of persons who are on. I realize that we still have a couple of persons who are going to log on. So I am going to ask that we start promptly at 5 minutes, where I will introduce the guest lecturer, Mr. Michael Eugene, and I'll ask him to start his presentation. But please give the other participants another 5 minutes to access the Zoom platform. Thank you. I also wish to let you know that we have muted the participants so that we can control the meeting as such. When the presentation starts, if we have questions and answers, we'll ask persons to raise their hand. So if you're unable to unmute, it's because we are controlling that function. And so give us 5 more minutes before we formally start the session. Thank you. Okay, hello again. 5 minutes have passed. The first participants continue to log on. We have over 50 persons already on. As such, I will proceed with the session. I would like to introduce you to our guest presenter, that is Mr. Michael Eugene. Mr. Eugene is a national and resident of Dominica, the Nature Isle, where he operates JTAS tours. And this is a excursion company that provides a range of tours, adventure, nature, cultural, heritage across the beautiful island of Dominica, as well as they also offer culinary experiences. Mr. Eugene also was involved in the development of Dominica's long distance walking or hiking trail, and he has considerable experience in operating a rural tourism venture. I am going to now share my screen so that I can bring up his presentation, and then I will also hand over to him to expand on the introduction of himself. I just want to let you know that we want this session to be as interactive as possible. And as such, you are free to ask Mr. Eugene questions. At any time during the presentation, we request that you show your interest in asking a question by raising your hand. And in an order, we will unmute you to be able to ask your question. I will probably just have to alert Mr. Eugene at various points along his presentation that there are persons who are interested in raising their hands or making a comment. And he will pause, and then we will unmute you so you can address Mr. Eugene and the rest of the participants. Please give me a few moments while I share my screen.
So while you bring up the presentation, I'm just going to say good afternoon to everybody, express my my happiness that I'm going to be on this exchange with you this afternoon. As Shauna has mentioned, my name is Michael Eugene, and for this session this afternoon, let's call me Michael. Please no Mr. Eugene. Let's just call me Michael. So I am a certified tour guide. I'm also a certified taxi driver in Dominica. I'm the team leader for Jungle Trekking Adventures and Safaris, which is JTAS. We're a certified tour operator. And I've also been certified by the CTO as a certified tour guide trainer of trainers, which means that I have been involved in a cross-section and interacted with the tourism service providers in Dominica across the board. I happen to be in tourism now, but my formation started many, many years ago, as early as 1992, when I worked in small business in the Development Foundation in Dominica. Subsequent to that, I worked in investment promotion. So I've had a very wide and deep interaction with a lot of rural enterprise, small business development people. Next slide, please, Shauna. Okay, so what we're doing this afternoon is we're having a conversation, an exchange. After all, you all are rural tourism experts by now. So I'll just provide a little bit about my personal background, my business background, talk a little bit about rural tourism, and I'll add some aspects of my business experiences that I will be happy to share with you to provide some guidance as you develop and as you get deeper into this field of rural tourism. Next slide, please. Okay, so in 2002, Jungle Trekking Adventures and Safaris, JTAS, was incorporated. And somewhere around 2012, we began using Experiences Caribbean as our brand name. We operate sub-brands, which is Cooking with Daria and also Jungle Trekking. Jungle Trekking essentially has everything to do with the outdoors. And of course, Cooking with Daria is confined to things culinary. And I have been directly involved in all aspects of the operation. Next, please, Shauna. So, since 2005, we've been providing contract services to Celebrity Cruises. And our first contract that year was for our cooking tour, Cooking Caribbean Rum and Nature, also called it Cooking Caribbean Adventure. And in 2008, Celebrity added a second tour, which was a surf and turf tour. And somewhere between 2009 and 2016, we were able to begin providing services to additional FCCA cruise lines. And outside of just these two tours, we've added many, many other tours. So at present, we possibly operate with about 8 or 9 cruise lines and possibly 9 or 10 different tours. So we've grown over that period. Next, please. I haven't mentioned that, but I'm trained chemical engineer, and I worked for 4 years in industry. And then subsequent to that, I worked in small business and in investment promotion. That took me through to 2007. And then between 2008 and 2009, I had great fortune in doing a lot of consulting assignments. I have done work with IICA, Dominica, as well as the Friends of UNESCO World Heritage in Dominica, all to do with developing tourism opportunities. For IICA, we did a strategy paper on linking agriculture and tourism. And for the World Heritage, we did a product and skills inventory to assess the tourism enterprise potential within the UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm sure by now you must have imagined and figured out that Dominica does have a World Heritage Site. That was inscribed in 1998 and is the Mont Wapito National Park, UNESCO World Heritage Site. Interestingly, it's the first site that was inscribed within the Caribbean region for the biodiversity and very rich flora and fauna. And Shauna did mention that we are called the Nature Island of the Caribbean, and that's exactly why. I also prepared a community tourism promotional strategy within the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So there's been a lot of going on the ground, meeting the local people, and losing myself within the experiences and getting skills upgrade, meeting fantastic people and learning as I've gone along. Next, please. In 2010, Shauna did mention about the Waitukubuli National Trail. So that is 115 miles long. It is the longest walking trail in the Caribbean region. It goes from the extreme southern village of Scottsdale, and it goes all the way to Portsmouth in the north. It goes through 33 communities. It goes through farmlands, homesteads, 2 marine reserves, the World Heritage Site, farmlands, wild forest. So everything Dominican tourism actually goes through the Waitukubuli National Trail. I spent almost 2 years on that project. And during that time, it was a deep immersion across Dominica and interaction with the people, the sites, the attractions, the accommodation, the enterprise development. Now, the idea of the Waitukubuli National Trail was to open up rural Dominica to provide opportunities for foreign exchange earning and to provide employment across the island, but also to open up these rural communities that had never seen tourists before, that had never earned through tourism. So we had this deep immersion, and as a product development specialist, I had to walk the trail many times, and I had to document and catalog all the features of the trail. So the trail description, I did many walks with forestry personnel where we cataloged the flora and the fauna because we had to do an inventory to have an idea of the impacts thereafter. So the situation with flora and fauna before the trail was opened and thereafter, so we could track the impact of the trail. As part of that Waitikubuli National Trail assignment, I did a study tour. I was part of a group that did a study tour on the Pennine Way in the UK. Now, the Pennine Way is one of many long-distance walking trails within the UK. It is an old one, and interestingly, it is the Pennine Way that was the concept for the formation of the Waitikubuli National Trail. I always like to give credit to Dr. Bernard Wilshire, who conceived the idea of the trail. And subsequent to that, there was a project management team of which I was a part, and we developed the trail formally. But during the product development process, we did a study tour of the Pennine Way, and we were exposed to trail development and rural tourism. So imagine walking through rural England, through the bars, through the pubs, through the sheepfolds, staying in the homes, not in the homestays, staying in the hostels, the village inns, visiting the search and rescue systems. So that was able to provide me and the rest of our small team interesting insights on the possibilities for long distance walking trail and rural development. So that was really key in opening up my eyes and beginning to introduce me to how deep rural tourism can be. Next slide, please. And then while we were just completing the Waitikubuli Trail, I was able to do my first visit to World Travel Market, which is a very large trade fair, a tourism and hospitality-based travel trade fair in the UK. And between 2012 and 2018, I must have visited the UK 4 or 5 times to participate in that show. So I was able to meet prospective clients, and many of these folks I continue to do business with today. But much more than that, visiting WTM, which is what it's called, allowed me to gain new insights, because you walk the floor and you begin to see what other people are doing. And that is so very important in the product development, in the scoping exercise, where you can begin to look at the possibilities that you never dreamed of. Next slide, please. Okay, and then in 2014, I participated in a rural tourism training program at the Postgraduate College of Colpos in Mexico. That was another deep experience. I think that's where I met Shauna. We were both participants in this rural tourism training exercise, which was just under 2 weeks. Fantabulous, if I can use that word. Very deep rural connections, good people, good vibrations, and I'll share a little bit later down in my presentation about this Mexican experience. Next, please. Just last year, I was fortunate to build on all these previous experiences through my involvement with the Winter Team, the World Indigenous Tourism Alliance, on a UNDP-funded project to develop the Kalinago in Dominica. Now, the Kalinago are the Caribbean's indigenous people. Christopher Columbus referred to them as Caribs, but they were actually from the Kalinago tribe. And this project sought to look at developing the Kalinago, their livelihoods, creating new opportunities for them. And that was an indigenous tourism specialist team. And that opened my understanding and provided a lot of information about indigenous tourism versus community tourism. and also the whole idea of indigenous people development. So the indigenous people in Dominica are resident in a very deeply rural setting. So that built on what I had already learned and what I had known already. Next, please. So it hasn't been all fine and dandy. There's been some serious landslides and accidents as we move forward. We call them disasters. 2017, Category 5 Hurricane Maria hit Dominica. And so Dominica limped back to life somewhere 2018. And almost a year and a half later, COVID-19 hit in 2020. And the impacts on the business were serious. We had no hiking trips from 2017 to 2019. And there were no business operations from March 2020 to October 2021. So consider a small business, small enterprise, where the two key participants, Dara and myself, are both deeply involved in the business. So we're talking about an aggregate of about 4 years between 2017 and now of not operating as we used to. But we've persisted, and I'm here today, and we're optimistic. We think the future looks good. Next, please. All right, so global tourism. The statistics on the economics of global tourism, sorry, they speak for themselves. Tourism is big business. Billions and billions of dollars every year. Billions of people travel. And for us on this call, for us on this presentation, I'm not so sure what aspects of the industry we're involved in. Some may be in administration, some may be service providers like myself, some may be tour operators, some may be accommodation providers. But nonetheless, the visitor options are endless. And essentially, a visitor doesn't have to use your product. They don't have to use your service. They can visit your competition, they can visit another island, they can visit another continent. So you need to be really sharp, you need to be really good at whatever you do, you need to be your best. Next, please. You need to go back one slide. All right, what is rural tourism? I'm sure all of you on this call can answer me, so I don't even have to say anything. But out of my rural tourism cost information from Mexico, there's a few definitions that stood out. The guests stay at least one night to satisfy specific needs. So they come to look for certain things. They don't just come and accept what is given. They come with certain expectations in mind. There is a respectful contact with the environment and an interaction with the locals. Now, that's a loaded statement. Respectful contact. They come to interact. They're very conscious of the surroundings and the environment, and they want to interact with the locals. Very, very, very important. Most people who engage in rural tourism are highly educated. They have studied where they've come to, and they know what they're looking for. Rural tourism also supposes an additional income for local villagers, other than crop production. So you will find that folks who had traditionally survived on agriculture, they now open up bed and breakfast. They now produce juices. They now make souvenir items for these visitors. So there's additional income, bigger enterprise development opportunities. And rural tourism is a complex activity with multiple aspects. And it is not only farm-based tourism, but it encompasses all the modern day elements. So there's a long gamut of things that fall into rural tourism. Eco, agro, educational, all sorts of things fall into rural tourism. Next slide, please. But this is my favorite slide. This is my favorite definition. I think it really puts rural tourism in good context. It means that rural areas are being adapted to urban needs to enhance tourist aptitudes. So deep country areas, they have to be transformed, they have to be adapted so that they can receive the executive who is looking to get away, who is from the urban area and who has needs. So rural tourism is not confined to the country area doing rural things. It's deeper than that, it's more complex than that, and that is going to be the challenge as we try to develop and build rural tourism. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to share two experiences of rural tourism. Go ahead, please.
Our country is waiting for you. Welcome. Welcome to the adventure. Welcome. Welcome to the adventure. The adventure is to show and share our culture. Every plant, every animal is our family. They are our ancestors. They live, they grow, so we can live and grow. We are all connected. To connect our mind, body, and soul to the land, we dance. We share the light. We share the land. We share this journey. is waiting for you.
Shona, can you increase the volume, please?
Sure, will do.
Okay. And we have another YouTube video coming up now. So I imagine that this last presentation must have stimulated a lot of thought, which is what we're here to do today.
Should I start, Michael?
Yes, please. Oh, yes, go ahead, please. Volume up, please. Yeah.
Woo! Adapted mind
Oh, Lord.
math! Come explore the site with me.
That's all right.
I think I need to share the screen again. I'll start
Yes.
over the second video. Sorry about that.
Please, that's fine, Shona. That's okay.
The Trans-Bhutan Trail has a beautiful old world charm. While on the trail you can enjoy the stunning landscapes and campsites, it's the towns that throw up the most stunning architecture in the Himalayas. My guide Sonam is one of the 4 tour guides in the country who's done the whole Trans-Bhutan Trail.
It takes 36 days to complete the trek. So among 36 days, we will be hiking on the trail for 29 days. So the rest of the days will be like the arrival day and the departure day.
The earliest record of the Trans-Bhutan Trail dates back to the 17th century, but we believe it must have existed much before that because it was the only means of connection and communication that our ancestors had.
lamdi katile ko wachin tab dega katile nembe wachin tab dega te kara ro phamdi sugi te kongi jipsel be be te chachu nupcho kara jindal tab subigi te ro lam ane be sedi nanu la sedi nanu te la lene te ro
Chortans played a lot of different roles to the travelers. They not only provided shelter, but they also protected them against the malevolent spirits in the wild, and they were also used as trail markers.
What's brilliant is that you can pick and choose the number of days you want to do. The western part is more rich in history, culture and architecture, and as you head more east, the place has more of an old world charm.
The trail runners were also known as Guards, and they were responsible for delivering secret missives and messages between the zongs. The most famous Garb was known as Garb Lungi Korlo, and he was aptly named so because Garb Lungi Korlo means Garb with the wheel of wind. And this was because he could travel unbelievably inhuman distances in a day. His last duty was to travel from Trongsa to Punakha to deliver a message and return on the same day. And if you looked at the Trans-Bhutan Trail, that one-way journey is almost like 40-something kilometers. So he walked 80 kilometers in a day, which is quite unbelievable.
바다수 종람 조스레 데딜란 선남기릭 마다우레 베스레 아니베 두세 데 해마기 대안디 종람디 뚜루자 뚜루 데 민두 데 같이베 조금 이나서 같은 디멤베 데 해마베 같은 데파 야 나레베로 뉴장 멤베 아니 대다이베 야레마기 같이 해차다우 데 뚜루 아님 뉴장레 야레 베레 베로 데 팔레베로 아니베 텐데이메
So walking on the Trans-Bhutan Trail is like time traveling to the past because a lot of the trail is still intact. A lot of the culture and the traditions and the architectures that you see and experience is very much the same.
Okay, so these two videos, when I saw them for the first time, I was blown away. And I thought that they would be so appropriate for this session because it provides you with an up-close idea of what rural tourism is elsewhere in the world. So if you didn't know, you know now, which is great because it means that you have a standard to work toward. You have something to set your sights on to develop to a bigger level. Next slide, please. In everything that you offer, quality is going to be really important and the customers must be satisfied. So there must be customer satisfaction. In terms of quality, there are only two ways to doing something. Either you do it well or you don't do it. In between doesn't count. You have to do it as best as you can be. Be an expert at what you do. Be the best you can at it. Become a specialist in your niche area. Know your niche area, know it well. That way you provide an excellent service, and that way every customer is a happy customer. So quality and customer satisfaction, really important. Next slide, please. Now, I need to bring you to reality and to remind you that today, beware that the customer has access to doing an online review about you. So you have your product, you have your service, you're selling it on the internet and on your website, but your guests can do an online review about you. This is how they tell the rest of the world about your product or service. And as you know by now, reviews can make and reviews can break you. So quality and customer satisfaction really requires some effort, because through reviews, you can get all flowers and roses, and you can also get not very pleasant reviews. Next, please. Now, I wanted to share a real life situation which occurred about 2 months ago. This is part of an excerpt from an agreement I had with a guest, Mr. NG. And it reads up to and before February 18th, there's a full refund. He had paid the 7,000 plus US for his entire holiday. And there were 3 bullet points, and the 4th one I have in yellow, which says no show, no refund. Next slide, please. So guess what? Mr. NJ came with his family. It was supposed to have been 3 of them, only 2 of them arrived. The son did not travel with them. And the very last day prior to his departure, we were exchanging on a few things via WhatsApp. So that's actually the WhatsApp message that I have preceded for this purpose. And he says, "Hi, Michael, I got your message. We have had a great trip, blah, 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 blah. Since there are only 2 of us rather than 3, he continues, this means that you will be making a partial refund to me." And then he's instructing me how to do it. Will you do this through my debit card, whose details you already have, or do you want my bank account details? Best wishes. Now, this is a real life situation that you might get yourself wrapped up in, and you need to be flexible. Of course, I did the right thing. I provided a partial refund. He was paid cash before he left. And he did write a review, an excellent review, but he did sully one of the guides who he found was not good at all. And I'm just saying that to say that had I not come through with that refund, he would have sullied me as well, I'm sure. So you just need to be so very careful. Next slide, please. This is another one. Just about the same time, which is about 3 weeks ago, there was a group of 9 foreigners, Europeans, trekking part of the Waiti Kubuli Trail with me. And what we do is when they set off from one location to hike a particular trail, we move the luggage from that location to the next location. So when they get there, the luggage is there waiting for them. So I moved the luggage that midday, and I got to this second property like 2 o'clock. The owners of the property were there. It's on the Atlantic, it's on the beach, and there was no sign of anything. That happened to have been May Day Monday, which was a holiday in Dominica. Lo and behold, closer to 5:30, I'm relaxed. I'm thinking, well, everything is going okay. I get this series of text messages on my phone. Michael, this is not anything close to a hotel. The windows are shaking because of the noise from the beach party. The rooms are below any level of comfort. To be honest, I do expect that you pick us up to bring us to another place. Now, there's good things when you're a tour operator. You work for yourself, the benefits are yours. The harder you work, the greater the benefits are. But there's also some very dark periods, and this was one of them. So I had to stop whatever I was doing, and I had to get on the phone. I had to find another accommodation for them, and then I had to get transportation to move them to the next location. So customer satisfaction and quality, we had to do that to ensure that we were able to save the vacation. Next slide, please, Shauna. I think this is so I just want to give an impression of what the guests were actually experiencing. If you could play the video, please. Now, it's going to be important to put this in context. These are people who've been hiking for the past 4 days. They are worn, they're tired. They come to this East Coast community after about a 6.5 hour hike, and this is what they walk into. So all hell breaks loose, and they don't want to stay here. And every fault they could have founded that village in, they told me about it. So of course I had to move them elsewhere, and we had to incur the expense of that as well. Next slide, please. So quality and customer satisfaction. Quality is not just how good is the tour. It has to do with everything that surrounds the tour. So we talk in rural tourism, we're in a rural setting. The accommodation, where they sleep, the food, the transportation, the environment within which tourism offering occurs. They're walking the trail. Is the trail littered with debris, with garbage? Is the village clean? What is the level of professionalism of the team providing the service to the visitors? The taxi driver moving them. Is he speeding? Is he well groomed? Does he have a shirt on? Your tour guide, is he well groomed? The living conditions of the local population. You ought not to bring your guests into a very broken community, a very economically deprived community, and it will not work well with them. You need to understand your product, and you need to ensure that everything that you showcase is in sync. The living conditions, the surroundings, the accommodation, the food, the transportation, the service providers, and it's a completely professional product. Next, please. And further to that, we're talking about how broad the term quality is. A few questions. Are your guests being asked to dine in a setting where the family stands by and look on hungrily or eat sufficiently less? So when we began initially doing rural tourism and homestays, what happened was that the home family, the home would have served the guest and they would have eaten after, which they did not quite understand the concept. So we missed it initially. We quickly fixed that, but it's one of these things that as the contact, as the person with the responsibility for moving the guest, you need to ensure that it's a completely positive environment that the guest is going to be put into, that everything has to be at a minimum level that the guest can feel a part of, and it jives nicely with accepted standards. Additionally, are you feeding the guests in an open setting while thin and hungry looking dogs are gathered? And that is kind of typical in some of our Caribbean villages. We may have stray dogs. There may be an open setting where the villagers and the guests might congregate. Be wary of how is the setting, roaming animals. You need to be conscious of these things, all right? Because that's all part of the product, and it jives well for quality and customer satisfaction. Next, please. Now, whatever industry that you're in, what are the industry requirements and specifications in your line of business? Do you meet them? Have you researched what is accepted? Have you gone to Google and have you been able to see videos like I've shown a while ago to see what else exists elsewhere? This is going to be really important. How else would you know what international standards are? How else would you know what you're competing against? And what level of quality do you offer? How are you going to assess yourself? You need to be exposed to other things. So thank God for the internet, you can Google and find out what the industry standards and specs are, so you know what you're working toward. And do you have reviews to back up the claim that you have a good level of quality? If I Google your particular operation, what will I see about you? Will I see anything? So these things are really important as far as meeting quality and customer satisfaction, expectations and needs. Next slide, please. Expectations. Can you back up, please? You missed a slide. Yeah. How do you sell your product or service? What do you promise? Have you delivered on the promise? Did you give value to the visitor or customer? So right now, I work through a portal out of the UK, and there is so I do curated holidays, so we do customized holidays for visitors. And for about 3 months now, I have been exchanging with a couple who are coming down to Dominica, arriving this Saturday. So for the past 3 months, we've been backing and forthing on what they want. I've been sharing videos with them. They've told me what they expect. Based on what their interests are, we've fashioned and customized that particular trip with XYZ, whatever it is. So beforehand, they know what to expect. They've come with the expectations. I better deliver to them. Now, in terms of meeting and exceeding visitor expectations, the last point is really important. Take it upon yourself to exceed visitor expectations every time. This is your challenge. They expected A, B, give them the entire alphabet. Take it upon yourself to exceed visitor expectations. One of the ways that you can do it is give extras, allow add-ons, and begin to cost it into the price. So they will get frills that they think are great. They are great, but you would have costed it into the price. So you can be a bit lavish if you're creative. Next slide, please. So perfect examples of how you can meet and exceed visitor expectations. The guests arrive at the airport after a long day of travel. Have a hot or cool towel and bottled water upon arrival at the port of entry. Very important, especially if they know they didn't pay for it. That will blow them away and they won't forget that. If you're hiking the trail, you want to arrange for a massage after a hectic day of activity or after hectic days.
Michael, you seem to have been frozen. Oh dear. Michael, are you with us? Mr. Eugene? Okay, I think I need to.
That's okay.
You're okay, fine.
I'm
You're
good. I'm good. Yes. So canyoning was late and they had to rush on to the dive boat. But guess what?
I'm sorry, Michael, could you just back up maybe 1 or 2 sentences? I think
Sure.
you froze while you were speaking. So we lost you at massage.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so after 3, 4, 5 days of continuous activity, their bodies become tired, and I'm going to arrange that they're going to have a massage somewhere in a very special place. I imagine that, I know they're not expecting that, they have not paid for it, but I know it's going to blow them away. I want to cite another instance also where we had a couple doing a 4-day whirlwind adventure tour of Dominica. They came for 4 days and they were doing everything. And that particular day, they canyoned in the morning, they went to the canyon where they did canyoning, and in the afternoon they were diving. And there was a little window for that transfer. And of course, they had not eaten lunch. So I arranged for pizza lunch on the go. Wasn't part of the plan. They didn't pay for it, but of course it was costed into the plan. So they were really appreciative. They were really appreciative. Did they expect it? No. Were they happy? Yes. So again, exceeding visitor expectations, very, very, very important. Next slide, please. Trends. What sold 5 years ago doesn't sell now. The international conditions have changed over the past 2 years with something called COVID. COVID has changed a lot. What is today's traveler looking for? Now, I didn't say what is today's tourists looking for. Check that out, because generally tourists are people who travel on cruise ships most times, and travelers are reserved for people who choose to go into rural communities. So essentially we're talking travelers, and what are they looking for? Especially post-COVID-19. What is being demanded? Have you researched? Do you know? Has the economic crisis, the COVID-19, generated opportunities for new kinds of trips, service and product development opportunities? You have to do your research yourself. It turns out that from Dominica's perspective, it appears that visitors seem to be looking for safer holidays, and that's a big checkoff for Dominica, because our deaths in Dominica did not exceed 70 or 75 during COVID. So word got out that we're really safe. People are looking for shorter holidays as well. People are looking to stay closer to home. So these sorts of things mean that we've had to change our product, be more flexible on our offerings, so that we can ride in the trends. And of course, a big trend works well for Dominica naturally. The destination has to be a safe one, because a lot of people want to unplug, they want to recharge, they want to rejuvenate, and that has worked well for Dominica, and it's Safe in Nature program. Because Dominica did this program called Safe in Nature, where you were able to quarantine as you holiday. So if you spent 1 week with me, that would be in a bubble. There were a lot of requirements and training needs that had to have been met. Once these were all checked off on, it means that you could walk from the plane with vaccination requirements met and jump in my taxi and tour with me for the next 6 days under very controlled conditions. So this is a trend that has emerged, and you need to be familiar with what trends serve your community, your island. That way you can adapt and you can ride on the wave. Next slide, please. I mentioned a while ago visiting closer destinations, shorter stay and impromptu vacations, rejuvenating, unplugging, recharging, health and wellness, and having safer holidays and going to safer destinations. These trends may or may not be applicable to you, but whatever trends are applicable to you, which would work in your favor, make sure you know what they are. Next slide, please. Now, how do you deal with trends? I want to introduce the need and importance of product development. So if there is a sure and strong demand for a product or service, then develop the capability to pursue the opportunity. So the visitors are coming to your community, and there is something that is lacking, and you see the need for it, you go ahead and you get it done. You provide that service. However, you need to use professional expertise to ensure that the product you develop meets the market needs and industry requirements. Excuse me, you just cannot do anything. You need to ensure that what you're doing makes sense and it's internationally acceptable. Again, do your research, do your review, Google stuff, and see what others are doing so you know exactly what direction you need to be couching your product. Next slide, please. Now, if the opportunity is less obvious and there is need to develop the product. So for instance, you have a fantastic setting. How do you make the best of it to stimulate opportunities for yourself? How do you stimulate enterprise development opportunities? Especially if there is a strong perception that what you do will sell. If you get in the vibe that whatever you're going to develop, people will find you and they will enjoy it. So you start with a blank sheet of paper. You want to do an inventory of the physical features of your site, the attractions, whatever makes up that space that you want to provide that service within, that product within. Do an inventory of the physical features. Catalog everything. So for instance, if I was looking at the Kalinago territory in Dominica, I would do l'escalated share, which is a very steep lava staircase that goes into the sea. I will do Centipede Trail, which is another interesting trail that skirts the coastline. I would look at Isulukati Falls, which is one of the falls within the Kalinago territory. So, and then I would look at Charles Warner Pool, which is a gorgeous, hidden gem in the middle of the rainforest, a lovely swimming pool. So now I have these 4 different physical features. I want to do an inventory of cultural events within the Kalinago territory. So how do I embellish a visit to these physical sites? It's by telling people about what they cannot see, the softer elements, the culture, the traditions, introducing them to the food, the music, the dance. You have to do an inventory of all these cultural things and tag them onto storylines with the physical attributes. And then you want to add a third dimension. You want to involve the history. You want to do a chronology of the history, the important events, the coming of the indigenous people, the arrival of the Europeans, the fact that these people were continuously moved across the island, and because they were free-spirited people, they moved. Their history changed. In 1902, they were granted a special place that they could stay in, which was the Kalinago, the Carib Reserve. And then things changed, and in 1932, there was the Carib Uprising. All these things have to be brought together, and that then becomes the Kalinago story. Of course, deeper research has to be done to fine-tune certain elements, but essentially, that is a key tool that you can use. You do an inventory of the physical sites, you do a chronology of the history, you can establish the timelines when things happen, and then you can weave into that the softer and aspects of the culture and the heritage, which can be physically seen. Next slide, please. Now, all part of the product development process. You have your idea. You need to do research. Research the proposed product needs as well as the industry standards, and I've mentioned that before. Study, research the market, and look at other ongoing similar initiatives and take notes of the successes and failures. I cannot overemphasize that. Get trade secrets from competitors. Create partnerships with competitors. Look at what other people are doing. Befriend them. See what, as much as you can, about what's happening. Travel if you need to. Make new friends so that you can begin to get intelligence and industry-specific trade secrets that would help to embellish and develop what you're doing. And of course, you need to research the inputs that are required, because most of these have some serious financial implications. Capital is required, money for equipment, for houses, for facilities, human requirements, human needs. You have to bring in special people with special skills. They might be expensive. You might need to bring in technology. There might be issues to do with licensing, legal, other. So all that is part of the product development process that needs to be well researched before you launch. Next slide, please. And I want to go back to that Castle Bruce East Coast Village Inn situation that we had. You need to sensitize the key elements within the community of the plan. They need to know what's going on. They need to be sensitized about the plan, and you need to build community support. You need to build community endorsement and buy-in. The community has to feel a part of the product as well. After all, you're going to rely on them to provide the service. It's like inviting strangers into your home, and your husband, your wife, your children don't know they're coming. And you expect them to be bathed and dressed and ready to and prepared to have a meal with these strangers, but you didn't tell them that you were having visitors. So it's the same concept. Sensitize your community, let them know, let them get involved. Plan for solid waste management, garbage, noise, village beautification and cleanliness, health and medical support, and other systems. This is critical in ensuring rural tourism, a rural offering, takes off and it smells sweet, it smells good, it's successful. It's not about you doing your own thing, because the community will embarrass you if they don't feel to be a part of it. They must be involved from the planning stage. You need partnership. Partners are very important. And most important, train community personnel who will be part of the product and process. Cannot emphasize that. Tour guides, drivers, service providers, you need to train them to the specs that you're looking for, as well as the industry requirements. Next slide, please. Now, part of the product development process is you bring in a focus group to critique and offer suggestions during the planning phase. So if you're in Dominica, you find Michael Eugene and you invite him to help you to develop what you're doing. Wherever you are, there has to be experts. There has to be people who can help positively. Find them, bring them into a focus group to help you as you develop your product. You want to test the market ahead of time to get feedback of the product quality. Don't just launch and fool yourself that what you're doing is going to work. Ideally, you want to feel it gently. You don't want to spend everything. You don't want to invest fully. As you develop, get some feedback, invite experts to give you feedback so that you can understand if you're on the right track, if what you're doing makes sense. Excuse me. Invite market players and potential partners to sample the product. When you think you have everything all set, invite potential partners, people who will sell your business, people who will sell your tours, sell your products, sell your services. Bring them in, have a conversation with them, and let them endorse, let them tell you if it's good, if it needs improving, if it needs to be fixed. So that is all part of the product development process, which is very, very important. Next slide, please. Now, no matter what you do, no matter how good your product is, two game-changing aspects in any tour program: safety and security, and hygiene. Nobody wants to stay in an environment that they feel unsafe, that they feel that their possessions can be robbed, can be stolen. Nobody wants to go into a restaurant where the glasses, the cutlery is dirty. Nobody wants to eat anywhere or have any food when they feel that the place is unclean and health and hygiene are suspect. Safety and security and hygiene, two game breakers. Beware of these two and ensure that you meet these minimum requirements all the time. Next, please. Okay, so I wanted to share something. I'm not so sure if you're aware of it or how familiar you are with the concept. Is the concept of the tourism route. A route is a road, and essentially...
Michael?
Yes?
Could I just ask you to pause? I just wondered if we could ask if there are any questions or comments at this point before you move on to the next set of slides.
By all means, no props. Any questions?
And if there are questions, please just raise your hands. Okay, I'm seeing the hands come up. So what I will do, you'll see something come up that asks you to unmute, and then you can proceed to speak. Miss Chesney, Christelle Chesney.
Hello, good
Hello.
afternoon, good evening, good night. Hi, Mr. Eugene. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Enjoying your presentation so far. Quickly, what I wanted to ask is, how do you go about inciting support from the communities? Because I know that that is very important. How do you go about pitching the idea? How do you go about asking for support? How would you advise for something like that? Let's say for a small scale product.
Okay. My background dated back to, when was it? 1992, when I was involved in the Development Foundation, which means that I combed rural Dominica. So from 1992, with one job to another job, I met some interesting, hardworking, enterprising people. And when I began to think tourism, and I saw an opportunity to bring people off the beaten trail, it is these same hardworking people who I turned to. It was a one-on-one discussion. I convinced them that I had markets because I already was doing business, and I wanted to include them in what I was offering. So it was almost like a no-brainer for them. They just had to get bathed, get dressed, and be ready because I was ready to rock and roll. So, and interestingly, once other people see success, everybody falls in line. So once there is success, you don't have much of a difficulty in getting support. It has a lot to do with relationships, being there on time, and more importantly than these two is instilling confidence. Once people feel confident about what they're doing, they're with you, they begin to believe in you. And then there's no limit as to what you can accomplish together.
Okay, thank you. I am going to ask Mr. Norville Abraham to speak.
He needs to unmute.
Yes, I'm asking him to unmute. Mr. Abraham, can you unmute? Mr. Abraham, are you able to unmute? Okay, great.
Okay, you hearing me now?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, sorry about that. At the beginning of your session, before the video start to show, you mentioned that rural tourism does not stay in the rural areas alone, but I got a little bit cut off. Can you please expand on that for me, please?
Essentially, what I was saying is that rural tourism is generally confined to the non-urban areas. And you want to have sufficient and quality product developed that they feel that they are getting a first-rate service, but not necessarily the service that would traditionally be expected from a rural community. So in other words, you have to create the urban feel within the rural space, which is all hinged and heavily reliant on quality and good product.
Okay, thanks. I have another hand. This is from Radka Goldbounds. I am asking you to unmute, please.
Yes, are you hearing me now?
I am hearing you.
Right, good afternoon, thanks a lot. You mentioned hygiene being very important. How do we treat street food in terms of hygiene with your travelers or your guests?
Well, your service providers ought to be certified food handlers through the local environmental health department. So that is your first line of defense. That is your first line of building capacity to meet your standards, ensuring that whatever street food providers you use, they meet these environmental health requirements. So that's the first level of defense. Thereafter, you can introduce them to other things that you think are required for your operation. Remember, it's your service, it's your tour. You decide who you're going to work with. And you need to tell your people what you want of them and help them to get to that level.
Okay, thank you very much. Very well. Well, good questions and well answered, Michael. I'm going to ask you to proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the tourism route. Sometimes, if you're a small business person, you have a small product, an excellent product, but it may be too small or better served in combination with another to form a larger offering. So, or I will continue by saying it's an opportunity to connect and join different orbits, and different also means physically located in different spaces by a common thread or route. This bigger contribution tour will include offerings in different locations and of a similar theme. So for example, we see Test cricket coming through, and the Barmy Army, the English cricketers, the English fans, they would go from Jamaica to Antigua to St. Vincent to Barbados, etc. On each island, if there is a connection that can introduce a similar product, then that can become a route. So for instance, let's assume that these islands that they're going to have excellent rum. There's a very unique rum story on each of the islands. All these little individual mom and pop operations can be tied into something called a route. So as the guests go through, they can experience a mirror in each of the different islands and get a bigger picture, rather than stopping in this one community in Antigua, for example. They can stop in several communities and see different aspects of the same thing. So that is the concept of the tour route. Next slide, please. And I'm beginning to see more and more of that. International guests want to experience as much as possible while on their Caribbean trip, and they will island hop to see as much as possible. So you have a lot of guests, for instance, flying into the international hubs, Barbados, and then doing Grenada, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe, Antigua, and flying back out. They may take 3 weeks, they may take 2 months. And there is an opportunity to develop a product that meets that demand. You can consider developing a multi-destination holiday or tour package. You can design that customized holiday and offer specific experiences, linking different providers and tours. So we have 80 people on this call, which means I imagine upwards of 55 service providers from across the island, which means that we may have the raw material, the prerequisites for establishing some tourism routes within the Caribbean. Because I imagine many of you might be in different fields of business, and there's opportunities to collaborate to offer that longer route, that longer trail, that longer tour. Next slide, please. Now, what are the benefits to creating tourism routes? What are the benefits to creating tourism routes? We create and add value. Some guests will not have access to everything, but by introducing them to the concept of the route, you now open up new things that they can do. So you add value to their otherwise boring vacation. You can add elements to the overall visitor experience. Okay, so they get to see more, they get to do more, they get to experience deeper emotions. And they can add meaningfully to the holiday and guest expenditure and income. Let me say that again. You can add meaningfully to their holiday, and you can ensure that their expenditure, they spend more, and that there's greater income, foreign exchange earning potential. So the tourism route is a win-win situation for everybody involved. Next slide, please. Now, examples of possible themes. I mentioned the cricket holiday, but let's get creative. We can have a holiday that focuses on, as the fans travel with the team, they visit the homes and villages of the great West Indies cricketers. So in Jamaica, they might visit Courtney Walsh, Michael Holding. In Barbados, they might visit Gary Sobers, they might visit Desmond Haynes, Gordon Greenwich, and so on and so on. You're beginning to see the picture, the opportunity. You can have a route that focuses on the best white sandy beaches. and you can have only just white sandy beaches in that holiday. Then there's a rum route. Rum is important in the Caribbean. Very, very, very important. That way you can introduce the different aspects of rum. Islands like Dominica, for example, that are not flat and not well known for rum. But the rum that we are very well known for are herb-infused rums. We'll mix a lot of herbs and spices in our rums. So that offers a completely different element to the opportunity. Of course, food is big in the Caribbean. There can be a Caribbean food connection where you visit different islands and you see the different kinds of food. Jerk in Jamaica, Creole food in St. Lucia, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Dominica, Indian heritage food in Trinidad. So there can be opportunities for a lot of differences on that one vacation, showing different aspects of the Caribbean. And something that has never happened in Dominica is and I don't think it ever happens in the Caribbean, would be a religious route, pilgrimages. Pilgrimages are big elsewhere in the world. People from the Caribbean, they go to the Holy City, they go to Portugal to visit all these shrines. Why not have a religious route across the Caribbean islands, through the Anglican churches, to the Methodist churches, to the Catholic churches? So these are all opportunities that we can build on as far as the tourism route goes. Next slide, please. Okay, so through route building, which requires partnering, so you can't do it on your own, partnering, networking, and collaboration, you get access to new partners, new technology, and enhanced ability that equips you to do greater things. So this is a perfect excuse to partner with somebody to grow yourself. So initially you started as one, and then you have this partnership, and it now becomes 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 organizations, bigger capacity, bigger capital resource, bigger ability, bigger market reach. So that equips you to do greater things and overcome the barriers that comes with being small. But more than that, when there is time for you to be very niche and specific, you become that one single, solitary, small person again to provide that specific, special service. But you need the bigger hand, you need the chain to connect to have the bigger route offering. My question to you all, do you already have partners? Do you have partners on the other Caribbean islands that you exchange business ideas with regularly? This is going to be very important moving forward. Very, very, very important. Next slide, please. Okay. I needed to take a pause before I went into this one. Liability insurance, very necessary. Liability insurance, strongly recommended. And I'll tell you why. Once there is a fee being charged, there will be the expectation for a minimum level of safety. And then the community could be held liable if something goes wrong, if there is any injury. Particularly if the injury could have been avoided, if it was a poor construction, poor maintenance, shoddy service, somebody's going to be in trouble. So let me rephrase that. You may have, let's go back to what I know well, the Waitukubuli National Trail. Community-driven, and interestingly, the Waitukubuli National Trail is a perfect example of a route, literally and otherwise. You can see different things along that one route. But let's take a rural community, Grand Bay. A young tour guide from Grand Bay decides he wants to take people along segment 2, which traverses the Grand Bay area. While on that trek, somebody slips and falls. He doesn't have the proper training to deal with what happens after that. So there is an injury which turns out to be kind of serious. The person returns home, wherever they've come from, and they file a suit, they pursue court action, they file for claim because they were injured. That is what I'm talking about. Next slide, please. Now, if you offering the tour or the experience through a tour company that already has insurance. So for instance, when we're doing white treks along the Waiti-Kubuli Trail, wherever we are, anything happens, I provide insurance coverage because I have liability insurance coverage. So in the presence of a tour operator or a destination management company, liability insurance is less of a requirement because you're already covered. However, in the absence of coverage from a tour operator, you need to consider a special scheme that provides coverage for the guides, the service providers, and the tour operators in the unlikely event of need. Now, in 2009, our company operated an excursion, and there was a very bad vehicle accident while on our excursion. And the following day, the 16 passengers who were on that excursion, 13 of them had to be airlifted by air ambulance. That was the following day. And further to that, a total of US $10 million, East Caribbean $27 million was paid out in liability insurance claims. Insurance works. Insurance works. Insurance is a necessity. So how do you as a community make that happen? So ever since that occurrence in 2009, I have spent a lot of time with corporate attorneys while the situation was being dealt with. Hundreds of hours back and forth with attorneys. And I've come up with this concept that I would like to share with you. The idea of a national or community liability insurance scheme, which would work as follows. So let me take Dominica as an example. All the licensed tour guides in Dominica pay an annual licensing fee through the Discover Dominica Authority. Likewise, the taxi drivers, they also have to pay that licensing fee. The tour operators also have to do that as well. So these three groups of service providers, they have to pay that annual licensing fee. My concept is that they add an additional, they have an additional amount added, say $20 per tour guide, $100 per taxi, and say $1,000 per tour operator. So let us assume that the cumulative sum of all these amounts come up to say $5,000. The government in its wisdom then matches that with $5,000 of its own. So we now have a premium of $10,000. And it is that premium that is paid into a fund against which insurance protection is provided. So again, the guides pay a lesser amount, the drivers pay a greater amount, and it's still very marginal, not any big amount. The tour operators, because they have higher risk, because they make a lot much more income, they pay substantially more. So we're talking about, say, a premium, which is matched by the government authority, which totals, say, 10,000 EC. That can possibly get, I'm just quoting any figure, $1 million coverage. That means that there is a blanket $1 million US coverage before. So that exists once we open our doors to welcome visitors. So anything happens to that guy who was in Grand Bay along the trail, who somebody got injured, there is a fund that will kick in to cover him in the unlikely event that something happens. Okay? So the concept is It covers the little man who wants to get involved, who operates a good quality product, but doesn't meet the basic industry requirements. Because in some jurisdictions, liability insurance coverage might be a prerequisite to operate. And without that, a lot of potential operators cannot be service providers. They are locked out of the industry. So that is something that could be considered. It could be region specific. It all depends on how committed and organized that specific region is to the process of having a quality tourism product. But it also gives a sense that it's a relatively safe destination, because if there is a blanket coverage of, say, $2 million across Dominica, any tourist who comes and is injured, there is that initial pool that they have access to cover their needs. Now, that is different and separate from the liability insurance plan that I and my company will have. So in addition to that, essentially that means that there is now 2 tiers of coverage, a primary and a secondary tier, which is better for the destination. It also means that the amount that I would have had to fork out as a tour company for my insurance needs are now a little less, because there is another tier of coverage. That means that my exposure is less. And as a result, if I need exposure for myself, I don't have to put out as much as if there was no exposure at all. So can we have the next slide, please? So the benefits provides minimum liability coverage within the community and for the small operators. It releases the SMEs from the high prohibitive costs associated with liability insurance premiums. And these premiums can be very high. They exceed $10,000 and US. And for somebody who just starting up, that's almost prohibitive. That's almost like a millstone on your neck before you get moving. And there's no telling if your business idea will be successful or not. So it's a necessary investment to make, but you can get zero returns if your business idea doesn't take off. It facilitates potential operators to enter into the marketplace, and it provides an image of a safer destination. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've touched on a few things that
Michael?
I thought I could. Hello?
Hi, Shauna here again. Before you go into your experiences, could we pause again to ask if there are any questions or comments? Oh, hand goes up immediately. 2 hands go up immediately. All right, let me take the first one. I'm going to ask Mr. Dennis Clark to unmute.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
I just find this liability insurance is a bit bending over backward for this your guest.
Could you repeat that? I missed the first part. Could you repeat that,
I
please?
said I find the liability insurance issue is bending over backwards too much to facilitate your guests. I think the insurable risk should be upon their pocket and not the tour operator, not the business operator.
Okay.
Because a supplemental, you just dawned on me to ask, what is the situation with the destination for people who want to scale Mount Everest, for example, and they go there in droves? Who insures that, if any?
Okay. I will only talk about what I know.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at, through that lens as well.
First thing, you're correct. We always encourage our visitors to carry liability insurance. That's number one. Number two, some tour operators will make it a prerequisite to do business with them that you need to have liability insurance coverage. So it becomes incumbent upon you to look out for yourself to meet the basic industry needs and requirements. Now, I think, well, I don't know, but I would be very surprised if these tour companies offering expeditions I'll be very surprised if these tour companies offering expeditions to Mount Everest
like around
do
Fritz?
not themselves cover liability
Oh, we had
insurance
this
coverage.
discussion already, Fritz.
Okay, so but I quite understand where you're coming from, but I think it's going to be a necessity because certain tour companies will not work with you if you don't carry liability insurance coverage. But your point is well taken as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Dennis Clark to proceed. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yeah, Sean, he answered the question.
Okay, then I'm going to ask Mr. Sheldon Hay.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure, but for clarity, I'm checking. Our tourism minister here in Jamaica, Edmund Bartlett, had announced not so long ago about Destination Assured. I'm assuming it's speaking similar to what you're mentioning about the liability insurance, like a national liability insurance scheme. I'm not certain. I would have to probably get more information on it myself. But the concept to me sounds quite similar to what you're just speaking to. And additionally, this is not really a question, but really a comment. I just really came off a vacation for Labor Day weekend. Just yesterday, I was staying at a hotel, a group of teachers and myself, and interact with some of the tourists that were visiting from the UK, Canada. I realized that a lot of them, they're interested in doing some form of tour than just being at the hotel, you know, for the week or 2 weeks that they may be there. They wanted to, like, for example, take a trip to Kingston or to the Blue Mountains to experience the different side than just the North Coast tourist kind, you know, all-inclusive stay. And I realized that there is a need, just as you were speaking of, you know, that can offer us very good opportunities to embark on. And I like this presentation that you're presenting here about rural tourism. It's opening a lot of insights to see these in terms of a niche market that exists and these, you know, special interests that actually is there. So I'm still listening and gaining more info as you speak. I can say I visited Dominica too. The experience going around the freshwater lake, Champagne Bay, and so forth. So really, it's amazing thing when you can visit different Caribbean islands and get that experience and see the various opportunities that really exist.
Good vibes, good vibes. I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hay. Mr. Norval Abraham, I am asking you to unmute.
No problems.
Mr. Abraham, you had your hand up. Do you want to proceed? Okay, I'm not hearing from Mr. Abraham, so I'll move on to the next person. Miss Karen Bayer, can you please unmute?
Hi, good evening. Thank you both for hosting. My question has to do, I'm in Barbados, by the way. My question has to do with the partnerships that you mentioned a little while ago. And I'm wondering if this course or even just this live Zoom meeting is an avenue for us to connect with each other in our respective countries or islands, because I don't have, and I don't know how I would be able to do that otherwise. So I'm wondering, and I was wondering this even before the course started, if this was an avenue for the individual operators in the different islands to connect with each other. So yes, that was my question.
Okay, I guess I'll answer that. It's not something that we actually thought about during this course. I have noticed on the social forum that several persons have introduced themselves and what they do. And so I think that is one avenue that you could use to introduce yourself and to scroll through some of the persons who have already introduced themselves on that forum to see if there are entities that you would like to partner with, and then maybe you can reach out separately through that forum to them. That is one avenue that I think through the platform can facilitate those sorts of connections. Mr. Abram, I see your hand is raised again. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
All right, you hearing me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay, sorry about that. I was experiencing some technical difficulties there. What I want to ask Mr. Eugene that he mentioned about this section with tourism route, where he has one of the best route is White Sand Beach. I will like him to add Black Sand Beach also, because in St. Vincent and the Grenadines we have white sand and black sand. A matter of fact, most of our beaches are black sand. Black sand. It's just in the Grenadines we have more white sand, and just a few beaches on the mainland you have white. But from my experience, a lot of tourists visit the black sand beach a lot. And most of the black sand beaches located in the rural areas, where the rural people go and they cook right on the beach, all different kind of, we say, pot, roast, breadfruit and so. And the tourists will come and those small boat, I think they call it caparal boat, and they come on the beach and they will join the local roast the breadfruit, taste the food and so. It's just the problem, the black sand a little bit hotter. And sometimes they'll lay down on the beach and they take the black sand and they do all sort of massage and so. So please add Black Sand Beach as one of the major tourism route in the Caribbean, some Caribbean islands. Thank you.
Okay, I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because these were just ideas that I threw out. You have to drive your success. It's in your hands. You have to work with what you have. So I cannot stress that more. Dominica has black sanded beaches only as well. But you have to seize the opportunities. And this forum is an excellent platform for networking. So if it hasn't already started, you ought to introduce yourselves. You may want to have a Facebook page where you can also be able to exchange outside of this common stuff, share your ideas, introduce yourselves to each other so everybody knows who else is on board. You can begin to be more specific as to who you want to speak to, not just anybody from Barbados, but this particular course participant, because they seem to have what you're looking for. So use this forum to integrate, to share, to network, to partner, to help to build your roots. This is part of why maybe Shauna may not have thought of it, but that is one of the benefits that ought to come out of this kind of very large learning platform opportunity.
A matter of fact, the Marriott Hotel is going to build a hotel down in that area. I think they're supposed to start in the next 2 or 3 months. And one thing they mentioned, they are not going to change the black sand beach and put white sand there. Sanders Resort, they almost about 80% finished to build a hotel down in the Bucament area. Not too far, just about 2 miles away. And they changed the black sand and right now they put in white sand on top of the beach. Well, the community people are against it, but I think the Marriott have the right cancer. All right, thank you.
No problems. I guess these are local issues,
Yeah.
but most important is that generally the large flagship, the large chains, they offer an all-inclusive product, which may not often always endorse rural tourism, because essentially they may want to control and to keep everything in-house, and rural tourism is all about disappearing in the local community that you feel comfortable in, that provides good service, and spending your money and getting good service and enjoying the product. So I think that is my observation to do with very large resorts and how and their connection with rural tourism. I don't think it's always a natural fit. So just be mindful of that. I might be wrong, but just be mindful of it. You need to be aware that it may not be a natural fit for them.
Okay, thanks, Michael. I'll let you proceed with your presentation.
Yeah, okay. So just to say a little bit about Experiences Caribbean, Team Experiences Caribbean. Essentially, it's Michael and Daria supported by a team of very reliable suppliers. So we are the face of the brand. During COVID, there was only us, just us two, which worked very well because we only had one responsibility, was one mortgage, because we subcontract all our suppliers. Okay, and on a cruise day, we do cruise ships as well. Sometimes we may push 150 guests, and we have a very large operation, very large fleet of buses and guides. That's as part of our team. A supplier team that includes drivers and specialist guides and community service providers. In our operation, as should be the case in any operation, timing and scheduling is very important. Everybody has to know their role. Everybody has to be on time and on point. In order to have people who are plugged in to your frequency, you need to get quality personnel. Hands down. I mean, people who can go the extra mile to provide the quality because they have a deep pride in what they do. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, some very important takeaways. Pay your partners and suppliers well. Pay them on time. Don't be owing them. That's a problem. What I've been observing of late is that the reviews that have been posted on my holidays, there's an element of the money stays in the local community. The locals actually get the money. So when these guests pay thousands of pounds, thousands of US dollars, when they go in the community, they see exactly where the money is going. And as a result, if, for instance, I would have charged, let's just use any arbitrary figure, 225 US for the day, just using a figure, and I paid these guys 15, 16, 25 US, it would show, because I'd get shoddy service and I'd not get good people. Because close to 85 to 90% of what I am paid goes to these providers. It means that they give everything because they feel that they are well compensated for what they do. So that helps to build quality. These people must know that you rely on them, that they're really important in the scheme of things, and that you are there for them, that you see you have their back. That's going to be really important from a confidence building standpoint. Let them know how important they are to what you're doing, to your process. They need to know that without them, you cannot function. And it's not their stock, you need to reimburse and take care of them well enough. And this is something that I learned. We are at work, the guest is on holiday. Don't be dropping your guard and socializing with your guests. when you ought to be at work and taking care of them. This is the service industry, and let's serve. And when the guest has gone home, when we're not on holiday, when we're not at work anymore, we can drop our guard, we can do all these fun things. But whilst the guest is with us in our care, enjoying their holiday, we need to be assured and know that we are at work. Now, I wanted to add a few notes that I made earlier on this afternoon. And it has to do with being the best at whatever field you operate in. Challenge yourself to learn. Read, explore, expand your circle. If you are able to travel, because in so doing, you begin to see what other people are doing, you begin to experience other things. So for instance, earlier on, I spoke about my trip to Mexico, and there was a rural mountain community that we visited. It was called Tepexilotla. And fantastic. But I was able to perceive a very fine line between a shoddy offering and a quality experience. So it's only by traveling you can begin to see things and begin to see how things will work and understand exactly what is being offered. I want to challenge you to get out of your comfort zone. Because remember, it's only by growth and discomfort. Remember, growth and discomfort go hand in hand. When you get out of your comfort zone, you're uncomfortable. There's discomfort, but that's when you can push yourself and grow and begin to do new and better things. All right? My experiences keep reminding me that success in rural tourism as an operator has everything to do with building relationships, long-term relationships, and good partnerships. Very important. Your partners and suppliers must always know that you will be there and you will deliver for them. Again, I mentioned about Tepexilotla a while ago. And the conditions that night were not the best. There were some horror stories for some of the participants on that program. Shauna can remember that as well. Some of the group got sick. We were unaware of where we were going. So, for instance, there were 4 of us who we had to be broken up in small groups and taken to different locations to spend the night to sleep. And we had to walk up for about 20 minutes in pitch darkness on this very narrow, slippery trail. It was raining. Cross 1-2 rivers. We got to this house and we'd had a long day, so I was looking to have a shower. Walked through the house, ended up, the house has had 3 rooms, and I went and they said the restroom is outside. When I walked outside, when I walked into that room, I realized I was outside. I realized there were a few drums with a hose, and that was where I was supposed to have washed. That was like after 9 at night, after 10 at night. It was cold. There's no way that I could have done it. So we stooped, we were not happy. We changed, we went into bed. I'm saying all this to say that if you have an itinerary, it must be very clear to the guests. Whatever you're offering, there can be no surprises. If it is a positive surprise, then that's good. But if it is something that is sub-level, beforehand, the itinerary is supposed to be clearly spelled out. Day 1, you do this. Day 2, you do this. Day 3, you do this. With all the details and information. There can be no surprises in this business. Your guests must be provided with all the trip details beforehand. So this trip to Tepexilotla, it caused a lot of us to be very angry and unhappy. But it was very good because the people were simple and they offered us everything that they had. And to me, that's the essence of rural tourism. You go into a location and the people give from their hearts, and that is what deeply rural is supposed to be. Urban tourism, not supposed to be able to touch rural tourism because there's that aspect that rural tourism offers and gives. As for me, my very nature allowed me to see the value in this experience and to enjoy that evening in particular. And this is something that I'm not likely to forget. So in traveling, in reading, in exposing myself, I begin to learn new things and hold on to fond experiences and begin to use these as yardsticks, measuring means of how I proceed, what is good, what I don't like, and stuff like that. Shauna, can we have the next slide, please? I hope this one plays well. Okay, maybe not. It seems that it's going to be acting up, so maybe we can go to the next one. Before you start, there's a story behind this one. The Waitukubuli Trail has 14 segments, and the last segment, segment 14, it essentially runs along the main road, spanning the villages of Capuchin to Portsmouth. So a lot of guests who have to hike that section, about 70% of that route is along the main road. So because I have always prided myself in being a leader, we thought that we could possibly do that product differently. So the first thing I did is I went into the community of Capuchin. I had an old friend. Her name is Gilly Carbon. And I'd known her for a long time through my small business dealings, enterprise development. So I asked her, what did she think about opening a home to have a local lunch at her house? She said, no problem, Michael. So we did that. We ensured that whatever she was doing, it met the needs, my specifications, we checked that off. Then I thought, rather than walk this route, maybe we should boat the route, use the local fishing boat. Fishermen, so that I can include a different person who is not involved in the scheme of things, so that I can spread the benefits. So we found 1 or 2 or 3 local fishermen, but there was a next problem. The wharf or the pontoon was a broken strip of concrete. It may not have been properly done. It needed refurbishing, but all there was a skeleton, a very narrow column that the guests would have had to walk out on the sea, balancing as they went, and then they would have to sit down on the column and then get into the boat. So the first guest that we did that with, they had to balance. It was really scary, but the 2 German guests, they really enjoyed it. So we thought that we would possibly push ourselves a little more, get out of our comfort zone, and we decided to fashion and design a tour that would have done just that. Go to Capuchin, have local lunch, and then do segment 14 by boat. But we couldn't offer that service in that condition. But because we knew that we had contracts with that tour company from the UK, and because all the money came through us, we decided to meet with our community team and tell them we would provide the money up front. So we did the remedial work and whatever construction was required to make the wharf safe. So we spent $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. And then when the next groups came through that season and the following seasons, they've been able to very safely and comfortably walk on that local wharf or pontoon and get into that fishing boat. So this is a story behind Waitukubuli by sea. Waitukubuli is the indigenous name, which the Kalinago called Dominica. It meant tall is her body. So Shauna, can you go ahead and just share the video, please?
This is fine, it's all yours.
Okay, so I would have had nightmares the nights before that tour. Every time we operated that excursion, that day trip, I was on site because it was high risk. It had never been done, but I wanted to push myself. I wanted to offer something that nobody else did. So I got out of my comfort zone. I also exposed the local fishermen to an additional means of income. I exposed the guests to something that was very different. They got to sit in the fishing boats. They got to see Dominica from a different perspective. Okay? Rewrite the scripts, challenge yourself, develop things that others haven't done, so that whatever offering that you do becomes a must do, and then you can create opportunities for others to follow. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is turtle conservation. And this is growing in Dominica. And I imagine on some of, oops, can we go back, please? Okay, maybe not. But let me just talk a little bit about this turtle thing, hoping that it happens. Lovely. So we have these little fellas being hatched. The turtle conservation movement is very scientific. So there's dates and schedules that work very well. And the community offers that experience to visitors. You cannot get more high quality than that. Okay, I have seen big, strong macho men appear to be little, almost baby-like children in getting sucked into that experience. So that is deep. That is the quality that rural tourism can give, that no other kind of tourism can give. So there's a treasure trove that we're talking about that you need to exploit. Next. Okay, the Kalinago. We're sharing indigenous culture. Can you go back, please? Sharing indigenous culture, spending time with the artisan, learning about the culture, the traditions, and doing basket weaving. So that's a fantastic opportunity. Next. Okay, there's a story on this photo. And it says, giving back to the Soufriere Primary School. This is a group that came from the UK religiously for about 5-6 years, and they stopped coming from COVID. It started that they would come for like 5 nights. And on the first day of the holiday, we went to the south to hike the Waitikubuli National Trail, and we started at the Soufriere Primary School. And from the very first day, there was the request for a toilet stop. So the school kindly opened its doors so that the visitors would use the restroom. It turned out most of these visitors were themselves retired teachers. So from this initial stop, every time the guests arrived at that point, they would do a walk through the school, use the restroom, visit the classrooms, and do a hat collection. So I would have passed my hat around, and they would have put in whatever money they wanted to contribute. And each time that happened, we would buy something which at the next visit, the next group donated. So it could have been school supplies, stationery, or food, because the school had a school feeding program. So after a while, because most of these groups came out with a team, with a group leader, the word would have gotten back to the company of this arrangement, and that community adopted the school. So we started having donations from that larger tour company, and it climaxed after Hurricane Maria, when they sent quite a bit of supplies, inclusive of a PowerPoint projector, because that is a makeshift space that the school is using, and they needed to change things around. They didn't have access to the traditional blackboards. So that is the donation. the after Maria of these supplies. So this is a very valuable photo, and it means a lot to what we've been able to do. Next slide, please. Okay, that's me. Hard at work, hiking the Waitikubuli National Trail. Again, I'm on the front line. It starts and it ends with me. Next slide, please. Okay, before we start, I mentioned Experiences Caribbean. We do cooking stuff. This is an experience that began in 2005. This was our introduction into the cruise ship industry. And for 2005 and 2006, these 2 seasons, the tour was a rollicking failure. The first year, all the tours were canceled because we thought that we needed large numbers to begin to operate, and without large numbers, we were not being successful. So the first year there were 0 people. The second year, the ship made a special request that maybe you can offer the tour, please. We need to operate the tour. So we had 2 or 3 departures, no more than 7 or 8 people total for that year. The third year, things improved a little, and then we changed the name to Cooking Caribbean. And then things began to take off. And somewhere between 2000 and in 2008, we moved the tour from a rented premises in Roseau. So we used to rent a room at the St. Gerard's Hall, which is very close to the cruise ship berth in Roseau. And we did our cooking tour there for 2 or 3 years. And then in 2008, we relocated the tour to our family home. So this is the tour ramped up. The product has been developed. So we're kind of good at what we're doing now. Somewhere between 2011, 12, 13, 14, we did close to 3,000 guests. So it has turned to be big business with endless opportunities. And I think that this could be a good example of converting a rural space into an urban experience. We live on the mountains surrounding Roseau, so we're in a rural setting. But as you will see, it's a bit more urban than strictly rural. So Shauna, can you share?
I'm about to share.
of the best tours that we've seen on all of the islands. It was a fantastic family experience. We got up close, got to smell fresh herbs and spices, see where they're actually grown.
Oh, I learned so much.
Layering chicken.
Layering chicken. The combination of spices from the Caribbean cuisine.
Fresh matters.
Yes. Fresh.
Fresh so matters.
Like, did you know that cinnamon is made by peeling bark off the trunk of the tree, and then after a few days it curls up and dries? Well, a lot of stuff that she said was kind of like that, and I'm just so glad that I got to have this experience with her.
The rum. Where do I get started with the rum? That was incredible. Shots after shots after shots, all different flavors of the local spices. I didn't know I was a rum girl until I came here today and got to taste infused rums that have been infused for months. Great flavor, warms you up from head to toe. Getting to share laughter with everyone, it was incredible. I loved it.
Okay, so I think I've come to the end of my presentation. I trust that it's been worthwhile and useful, and provided a few pointers that you can build from, and that it only adds to what you've already learned, so that it can only make you and your product more successful. So thank you for being so attentive, and looking forward to hearing your comments, questions. Please let me hear what you're thinking. Let me hear what's on your mind.
Thank you very much, Michael. So I'm asking those who have questions or comments, please to raise their hands so we can allow you to speak.
Shauna, question. Shauna.
Yes, sorry about that, Michael. Please go ahead.
Yeah, question. Somebody's asking, and I thought I should have asked as well. Will the presentation be made available to them?
Yes, we're going to try to post the presentation, to maybe upload it to the platform. We have also recorded the presentation, so we are going to see how we can upload this to the platform. So do look out on the platform to where we can post, to where we post the presentation. Okay, so I have one hand up so far, Miss Melissa Herbert Mohabed. I'm asking her to unmute.
Good evening. This was a lot of information. I'm from Trinidad, and tourism is not the most focused business or type of industry. What advice do you give in terms of activating communities to work towards these kinds of being able to develop rural tourism and develop these spaces? How do you engage the partnerships with persons within the community? Is it, are you engaging community, or you just reach out to people who seem to be like-minded?
Okay, so are you talking from the perspective of a tourism person, a tourism administrator, or a community person who wants to do tourism? Are you still there?
Melissa, can you answer his question, please? Thank you.
We do rural development, so we are a bit external to the community as an administrator.
Okay, so you're not a talk company. All right, but nonetheless, I think a good platform from which you can build is whatever you do, whatever the possibilities are, whatever the potential within the area is, you may want to reach out to other islands, get partners doing similar things, and try to go the route means so that you can begin to add a stop in Trinidad as part of what they do. Okay. However, that process has to be driven by the tourist board, I'm sure. But the community has to also develop very niche activities and do them well. And success by one group pulls in others who want to enjoy that similar success as well. So I think you need to be looking for one small success story and try and replicate it, try and multiply it, and try and provide support to it so that it can be a good model and example for others to want to pattern and want to be a part of. And there's nothing like people seeing new things happening. People are making money that others won't want to get involved.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Sheldon Hay. Please unmute.
Yes, good afternoon or good evening, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Eugene, for your presentation. I found it very informative, educational, and quite interesting. I'm an educator and teaching actually 20 years now, but this is my first time teaching Cape tourism just since September last year.
Yes.
And much of what you're actually presenting on, I've, dealt with both in units 1, unit 2, in terms of tourism, in terms of entrepreneurship aspect, niche markets, and all of that. So I always had a passion for tourism, even though my main forte is really in culinary. But I would like to actually have a combination, like, gastronomy, tourism, and really look at starting a business venture in that aspect. And this course in terms of rural tourism really gives me more, open my eyes more to see what the business is really about and the approaches to take. So I'm hoping I can embark on it more fully. I know I've been taking up a lot with teaching. It's a lot of work, but doing this now, or even probably shifting focus to doing this as a entrepreneurial venture, and the information that you have presented really is helpful. I'm hoping I can really network with some others here, because I've lived in the Eastern Caribbean. I served about 4 years in Montserrat, and I've visited some of the other islands as far down as Trinidad. So the experience, that you mentioned, and the stories that you share, it's really show that we have something unique here in the Caribbean to offer, that many are paying to come and experience themselves. It's just for us to capitalize on the opportunities that are there. So again, I want to express my thanks for the presentation and for this course that was also offered.
Okay, thank you, Sheldon. Michael, please unmute. For some reason, I may have accidentally.
Okay.
Yeah, so just
That's
repeat
fine.
what you were saying a while ago, following Sheldon's comments.
Yeah, I wanted to add something. I said, thanks for your comments, Sheldon. They were well appreciated and well received. I wanted to add something that slipped me during my presentation, and I want to add this one story, which is really important. We offer curated and customized holidays. Guests tell us what they want to do, and they come for 1 week, 2 weeks. We had this couple who came for 3.5 weeks, just under a month. And I had been backing and forthing and exchanging with Cameron Smith. For about 3 weeks, he was doing his research and telling me what he wanted and what he didn't want. So, and I'd been caught up in many other things and continuously glimpsed at his status picture on his emails. So he looked like some guy in his 60s, no problem. So that night, one of my suppliers brought him down from the airport and I received him in Rosal. And when I saw the guy, I said, oh my God. The guy he turned out to be 82 and his wife was 81. But more than that, they were both frail. And Mrs. Smith was suffering from early Alzheimer's as well. Okay? And these folks signed up for a trekking holiday. So the very hard Waitikubuli Trail and Boiling Lake stuff, that's what they had signed up for. There was no way that they could be able to do that. So we had to flip the itinerary, change things around. So by the time that they left, they were really happy and very satisfied with what they got. So that was good. However, I'm sharing this to say that know who you're dealing with. Get the guests' personal information up front beforehand so that you can then decide what would be appropriate for them. And this will change everything. Vet your guests, ask for their personal details. And I cannot help but overemphasize that. Okay, so I just wanted to add that in because I think that's very important moving forward. For all of you who might be receiving inquiries and providing tour services, sometimes you may you may not do your due diligence and something that passed through the cracks and it may turn around to haunt you. Okay, Shauna, all yours.
Okay, Michael, I have been getting non-stop comments in the chat about how grateful they are for your presentation today. I think your nuggets of wisdom, the fact that we're almost at 2.5 hours on from the start of this session, and we still have a little over 80 persons on the session. It shows the impact that your presentation has had today. So I am extremely grateful that you were able to do this presentation, and I'm extremely grateful for the participants for their commitment to this course and for logging on to this 2+ hour session. I saw where several, there are a few comments of persons who are interested in linking or networking with others on this platform or on this course. And what I will do, I will probably post a message in the social forum asking for those who wish to have their information shared to do so and to share their contact details as well as a summary of what they do so that we can have a list that we can probably post so people can know who they want to reach out to, etc., etc., etc. So it gives that ability for you to connect with others who are on this course, right? So we'll post that in the course platform. I don't know if there are any final comments or questions, but just to say thank you to the participants. Thank you, someone who is actually on this listening. This is my colleague Anna Boscamanti, who is in headquarters at IICA, and she has been very supportive in allowing us to be able to execute this course. And some of you may actually have had direct contact with her, so I also want to thank her publicly for all the support that she has provided in allowing us to be able to deliver this rural tourism course. And again, and there are other persons at IICA. Some of you may have spoken with Tamara Gentles. There are other persons that we have gotten guidance from at IICA to be able to deliver this course. To all of the IICA offices who disseminated the promotional material on the course to allow us to have so many people on this course. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Michael. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will have further discussions with you, and please all do have a good night. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, everyone. And nice meeting you guys.
And lastly, as I said, because I'm still getting questions about the presentation and the recording, yes, we will try and share it on the course platform.
Okay.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yes, bonsoir.